because we've touched on it a little bit, and Tony brought it up here in this previous video about tooling. Because the truth is that unless we can read people's minds, I'm working on that, by the way, I should have that down by next month. We do need to have tools in our IT infrastructure that allow us to solve some of these problems, to be able to, detect intrusions and audit logs and all that other stuff. How many of those do you have, roughly? Is it more than 5? Is it more than 15?
Does it fit in a bread box?
Yeah, exactly. Does your licensing documentation fit in your email inbox? Because that's the problem that we're running into now, is that there's a tool for everything. And this is almost a unique problem for security. I've never seen this in the network or in the storage world. Maybe in cloud. Corey Quinn's going to have to back me up on that. I'm sure Amazon has a service for it. But think of all the tools that we've come up with to solve some of these security challenges. And a lot of them have happened when someone had a problem and it was like, oh, well, we're going to write a tool to fix that. Just look at antivirus. Antivirus was designed to prevent people from copying that floppy and sticking it into a machine and infecting themselves with an antivirus thing. Well, then viruses developed into malware and ransomware. So AV became EDR. Well, then it's not just the endpoint anymore because they're trying to go after everything in my network. So EDR became XDR. And then we have to find a way to tie all that stuff together. And in fact, honestly, if you go check out the Conversations episode that I did on our Gestalt IT website, that's the whole thing that XDR is. It's easier than trying to maintain a SOAR, and it builds all of these tools together so you don't have to do the hard work. And yeah, we're going to say it. All right, just brace yourself. Single pane of glass. Yeah, I know it hurts, but that's the golden standard, right? We want one console that we can log into and see all of our problems, preferably with a green number, a yellow number, and a red number. Can we get there? Should we get there? Is there a way for us to tie all of these tools together in a way that reads our minds and those that work for us to prevent all of these problems before they happen? And if anybody says yes, I'm going to slap you.
I was just going to say no, we can end the conversation. No, I'm just kidding.
Right, but
Roundtable.
But people keep building these things. Like we have heard from companies who have built SOARs, Security Automated Orchestration and Response, Automation Orchestration and Response, right? Let's take an overarching software platform, build hooks into it so that every one of these systems can interface with it, and we can automate those responses. Oh, somebody's laptop got encrypted whenever they went to the coffee shop down the road. Lock it down and don't let it get onto the network until we can determine what the blast radius is. Then we're going to push a policy down to all of the laptops based on that intrusion that says that if you visit a Starbucks, we're not going to allow anything to be installed on your system. Sounds easy, right? How many people on that team is required to keep that thing running for every new laptop that gets bought, for every new coffee shop that comes up, for every new potential way that you can find to drop things on a system?
And orchestration is great until the CEO needs to get to something.
Shut it all down because it's getting in my way.
I think SOAR and the tools within SOAR generally, I hate to paint with such a broad brush, but they're there just to answer the mail for poorly coded appliances and applications anyways. Your firewall should already be able to talk to an endpoint agent, an IDS. These things should already have a way to talk to each other, especially if they're from the same vendor. But now I have to buy also the SOAR platform from that vendor so that this tool can talk to that and that tool can talk to that, right? And it's absolutely maddening because it's sending us down a one-way road of a vendor buy-in, right? Where I have to have an entire platform by one vendor in order to get the most value out of the tool.
Do you know
where
your assumption went off the rails? Just because it has the company's name on it doesn't mean that the company built it.
Or that it would integrate with anything else that company created.
And honestly, to answer those things should be able to talk to each other. How many devices speak OSPF and still can't exchange routes?
But I think that's really what SOAR is intended, why it's important, because it becomes that orchestration engine or that service bus, to go back to those days, where it can move quickly to try and take all these different things. And to your point, Tom, when something new happens, we quickly need something to help everybody else avoid that same catastrophe, which I mean, the firewall should be able to handle that, but how quickly is it to take these old firewall systems, even if they're next generation firewalls, are big and they're heavy and they take a lot to change? We need something that can plug in a heck of a lot faster than we can change that firewall. Or, this is why antivirus used to use the signatures, because we can't change the antivirus software itself that quickly, but we can change the list of rules that it uses or whatever. And SOAR allows us to do that across multiple products and be able to say, hey, we can plug in new products into that because they're all API driven and can talk. And I know that's head in the sky type desire of what it should be, but that, each of the individual products are just not going to be able to move fast enough if we try to make them everything to everybody.
So, have we just changed the problem though from, okay, now we're going to defend all these. We have our orchestration engine that says, okay, now, I have to build that as a Bastion host so that you don't pop my orchestration engine. Now I just ignore everything.
I'll quote the IRA. You have to be lucky every day. I just have to be lucky once.
And that's exactly how I explain it to people when it comes to security, is that you have to win every single battle. They only have to win once.
Right.
Well, and it seems like a similar thing that we talked about in the early days of network automation, right? It's a tool of mass destruction.
Wait, we're not out of the early days yet?
Well, okay, fair enough. But it's the same thing. This is a tool that even if it's not through a compromise, even if it's just through a bug, this is a tool that could shut down your organization faster than you know what to do with. And so that's going to make, I think that the market for these orchestration tools is kind of like the moment there's the first big bug and somebody big is locked down because their security platform reacted to an anomaly that made it so that your airline could, your airport was shut down, or your entire airline was shut down or something. It's going to be something big and splashy and in the news. And then we'll be talking about going, and then all the guys who are making sales calls are going to be like, well, I don't want to be the next, insert airline here.
Yeah, I don't want to be the naysayer, but I've lived this, and I think we all have, right? I look at SOAR, as this idea, it's manager of managers, right? I had a manager of managers for insert whatever product, and so firewalls, I got a manager for all of those, and now I'm going to add another manager for this. The reality is it never ends up working, right? In order to get to that nirvana, it takes so much of an investment, not just from a dollars perspective, but how do you actually figure out what it is you really want these things to do? How do you take your business logic and the technology platforms and put that all together into a cohesive, ecosystem that you can actually make all of these things, work the way that you want them?
Somebody on the Zoom, you guys have something you want to jump in with?
Yeah, SOAR really seems like a architecture reattempt at doing what Styx Taxi was supposed to do. Styx Taxi was supposed to let product A talk to product B, pass threat intelligence around. And how many products support it today? A handful. SOAR seems very much the same way. It's yet another product to make data go from A to B, and with the worst case of it being a largely closed ecosystem of you have to be blessed to be able to talk to the SOAR platform, then blessed for the SOAR platform to talk to you.
But the SOAR was a response to the SIEM. SIEMs collect data and tell me something's wrong. SOAR actually goes and tries to fix it. And then that's so unwieldy.
So SOAR is your IPS to your IDS?
In a way, if you want to get really, really, really basic, but
because you know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
Nobody has an IPS. They all buy an IPS, but nobody has one because they don't dare to run it that way.
Why?
Why does RFC 1925 Rule 11 come into it?
Yeah, Jasper is hitting exactly at the point, and the problem is us. If you turn this thing on and just let it go, it would solve all of your problems. The hard part is the glass. I want to see what it's doing. I want to know that it's doing the right thing. I don't trust your software to keep me secure. I need to approve every change that it tries to make in my system. And as soon as you inject a human being into the loop, you have created a frail system because it is only as strong as the person sitting there staring at the glass.
But are we getting to the point where we've realized that we can't operate it that way? Like, have we finally gotten to the point where we've accepted that ransomware moves so fast that 0 days are impossible to detect ahead of time by the nature of the name? I mean, I kind of feel like, and I haven't been in this part of the industry as long as some of you have. I feel like we've gotten to the point where we realize we've got to let the computers do their thing because it moves way too fast for any human to really adapt and do anything about.
I want to go back to.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Jasper's the naysayer.
Let me try this. Honestly, I don't see 0 days at all because nobody uses them because it's too easy to go into any kind of network by using a misconfiguration or an unpatched system or just stupidity of users. You don't need to burn 0 days. Nobody does that except NSA and all the others. And still, I mean, the impact always happens after the initial breach has happened and they move on to their objectives of becoming domain administrator. That's what they always do. That's what they need to do to be the boss of the whole system. And you need to detect what they're doing to get there. That's what we always tell customers. You need to have something in place that detects that somebody's living off the land, that they're running PowerShell scripts, that they're using RDP that they shouldn't be using to this system. This is what you need to do. And you need manpower for that. And it needs to be people who understand what they're doing. And it's always the same problem. You can buy boxes as many as you want. If you don't have anyone who knows how they work and knows how to secure things, you will fail. You need people that are skilled. And they're very, very rare.
That's true.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they're also very, very expensive.
Well,
we don't want to
go hand in hand.
Yeah, we don't want to burn those people on, day to day looking at the dashboard to see what turned red today. Yeah. We want them ready at a moment's notice to be able to spring into action because whether or not it's a 0 day that somebody is burned or just a novel way of implementing a new code bug that got checked in 8 years ago that nobody saw, and they're exploiting it in a unique and different way now. Like you need a team that can attack that, whether it's a team built by a software platform with a SOAR or the best SOC that money can buy.
Well, and so that kind of gets to one of the points that I keep on thinking about is that the people with the skill set to do proper incident response, there's not nearly enough of them. And most businesses are not necessarily going to be able to afford to keep them around or have enough for them to do. So what do most places do? A lot of places will have contract IR, and that it's funny because you talk about having
Jasper raised his hand.
having an IDS and not having the IPS part on. I will say that I have seen an IDS chosen, like you can have two IDSs, right? Two IDS options, and one of them is maybe built into your firewall and is covered by an enterprise license agreement, and the other is a standalone product that is much more expensive. But that standalone product is from a company whose IR capabilities are exceptional. And so you're going to pay the money for the standalone IDS, not because so much that you really need the data it's giving you. It's the data it's giving their IR teams who are more like watching your back and coming going, guys, you have a problem.
You've effectively created a contract employee situation where they're monitoring what's going on inside of your network, and they pick up the phone to call your SOC to say, "Hey, guess what we just saw?"
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think
so. I wanted to go back to something that Brian had said, and then you had said about like, "Hey, we don't turn on our IPSs, and we should also let machines work at the speed that they can." Even the people that buy the expensive threat intelligence feeds don't turn on their IPS because their throughput goes down, or it starts blocking all the stuff that everybody wants to get to, or tons of false positives. Well, you just tune it up so low that everything gets through anyways.
And that was a statement that was made earlier in a presentation where someone was like, "We have 0 false positives," and trying to hold in the laughter was palpable. And I actually posted everybody's seen the GIF of the security guard who's patting people down, and he's just like waving his hands over and I'm letting it go through. Like that's the the animated version of what you just said, I can get to 0 false positives, but I have to turn the thing down so low that it doesn't actually hit on anything else anyway. But sometimes that's what people want. As long as the board's green, I don't care. I don't want to see problems. I want to know that the thing that I bought is working.
Just want to bury my head in the sand. I mean, I think that's it. I mean, you know, we talk about letting computers do what they do best. I mean, it really, you know, we've talked about it in a lot of different people around detection. I think detection is I mean, there is no such thing as prevention. I think we all agree anymore. There's always, you know, somebody's always going to build a better, you know, screwdriver. They're going to figure this out. So then we focus on detection, but detection is expensive and it's error prone, and it takes a lot of expertise, you know, to be able to you know, filter through the noise, and you know, and I don't think that they're like, we have all of these tools, like we don't use them. It doesn't matter, even if they're not perfect, we don't use them today. We have these capabilities and we choose not to because they're hard. It's because every environment is so much of a snowflake that there's no way to possibly get these things tuned properly so that you could actually, you know, make them very useful.
I wonder if there's a, John, may I go? I wonder if there's like a Balmer's Peak to this, which is, you know, Balmer's Peak. Well, I just talked about this a few weeks ago at work, which is why I bring it up. Balmer's Peak is where, you know, if you give a bunch of developers, you know, alcohol, at some point they become a better developer, right? And then, you know, it was meant as a joke, of course, until, you know, Harvard or MIT put like real science behind the study and realized like 1.2 beers actually makes people a better developer. So I wonder if there's like a Balmer's Peak to this, whereas we have all of these tools, right? And there's so many domains that require security. There's the storage domain, the user domain, the firewall domain, the IoT, you know, all these fronts that we're trying to face. And we have all these tools, and, you know, you brought up Single Pane of Glass, but I wonder if there's just too many tools, right? I wonder if there's a Balmer's Peak of tools where like, someone can be really good at their job if they have 3 tools or less, but we don't have 3 tools or less. And it's not about putting it on one dashboard. It's about being able to have the knowledge, experience to deep dive the technology of those 3 tools and really understand their tooling and their tuning and their optimization. When you go so wide, you end up not very deep.
So you bring up an interesting point. If we reduce the amount of information that each individual contributor needs to process and deal with, then we can make them more efficient, right? So let's use our example from earlier. There's 57 tools in my organization, and if every person needs 3 tools to be effective, what's that math? It's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of what?
I'm gonna go 15.
19
just
people
less.
On my SOC team.
Just less.
In order to work on that, right? You got 19 people on your SOC team?
No.
You're going to have 19 people on your SOC team in a year? Are you going to be able to maintain?
If that's the numbers, then that's what you need. Doesn't mean that you have it, then that's what you need.
Hey, everyone out there, is your boss going to hire extra people because because you need them to be the most efficient that you can be? Or is he going to look at you or she going to look at you and go, sorry, we don't have budget to hire somebody else this quarter.
I'm sorry.
You need to be more efficient, and maybe you can pick up one of those tools and Tony can pick up another one.
Listen,
and you might be a little less efficient, but we're going to save money.
Listen, that same argument could go just into storage. I don't know nothing about storage, but if you need to save data for 10 years because of compliance, or 5 years, I just read a policy we have to save some data for network retention for 5 years. Okay, well, that's going to take this much storage. Oh, but your boss isn't going to give you that much money. So what do? You say, look, if you want that much retention, it takes that much storage. I don't have to go invent a new compression algorithm so we can fit it in less data. No, it takes what it takes.
So I will quote.
You don't have it, you don't have it. But don't cut it, don't have resources. Right? Don't cut things in half to try and stretch it. You either have it or you don't, but try to get it. Whatever it is, whether it's storage, whether it's security, whether it's personnel, whether it's whatever it is.
We could go to, we could uninstall all those security tools, so our convenience is a lot higher, and now we can get the productivity we need.
Evan, what were you going to say before I move on?
I was just going to say you have to find a cheaper way to do it.
Well, I mean,
Yeah, you can't put it on expensive storage. You can't have those extra backups. Maybe you want to offsite that data somewhere else. No, you can't do it. Just do it on the cheapest storage as possible, just to make because you have to do that 5-year retention.
so I'll quote one of my mentors from college, Dr. Tracy Cart, who taught me everything I know about database management. There's only 2 ways to motivate people, is fear and greed. Maybe you can convince them with a good idea, but that rarely works. Do you know why your boss needs to retain all of that data? Because what happens if they don't? Somebody's going to find out and they're going to get fined. So if the amount of the fine is less than the cost of the storage, it's actually cheaper for them to lose the data. Chuck Palahniuk in Fight Club. If A plus B plus C is less than the cost of a recall, we don't do one. And it sounds horribly cynical, but this is what happens when you let untrained MBAs run a company. I'm going to slash costs to the bone to make the bottom line look good, and all of the problems get kicked down the road a little bit until we are running on the thinnest amount of people that we can. Everything's falling apart and burning down around our ears, and they just go, whoopsie, I guess we cut back a little too much. Maybe we can fix it before everything falls apart. In a perfect... Evan?
Speaking from personal experience, fear and greed are both good motivations. Fear does not work as well as greed.
Yeah, unfortunately, more people are motivated by greed than fear. Unless...
If you use fear, they'll do the exact minimum they have to do to get it done.
I will say the only time that actually works is when you hear the most terrifying sentence ever. Brian Krebs is on line 1 and he's asking for a comment. But yeah, like you said, greed is a pretty powerful motivator. Why am I going to buy another tool when we can just use this thing I found on the internet? Why am I going to have to pay for another person to look at that screen and try to figure out? Because you know what? We're never going to get hacked. Just like we're never going to get hit by a tornado or a hurricane or a flood or an earthquake. You're right. On a long enough timeline, you never will.
I feel like
that timeline is like a month.
I feel like tools, need to start coming with, like the ingredients and calorie lists for like, what does it take to actually run this tool? Like,
how much does it cost to operate in both dollars and people hours?
Absolutely.
O&M.
Yeah, that way it's because I think that's part of the challenge. It's we go out and we get these tools, and it's like the reality of, okay, to really get this value, and maybe it's like, okay, to get this level of value, you got to come with this many people. Like, I feel like we need to get some honesty, around what does it actually take? Because these tools it's not buy the tool and you get all the value for free. It's you buy the tool plus all of these other things, now you get that value.
But to bring up your point, and this is actually a really good idea there is a Balmer peak to these tools too. We're worried about what it takes to ramp to the peak. It's the other side that becomes the problem. A SOAR with 2 people running it is a really bad idea because that SOAR will never be fed properly. A SOAR with 40 people or 50 or 100 people running it probably isn't as efficient as it could be because there's a whole bunch of people sitting around twiddling their thumbs. You're the bash script guy. If we ever have to integrate bash scripts into this thing again, we'll call you. But until then, you just sit here and draw a paycheck. So you have to balance it appropriately. We want to balance a little more than we need to because we know what happens when we don't. Everything kind of goes to hell in a handbasket. But unfortunately, we don't live in a world of resource contention. But our resource contention is actually time. If I have more people, it takes me less time to get something done. The other side of that equation, the other side of that peak is where resources are in dollar amounts, where I have to pay a person to sit around and look at that thing. And if I don't think they're being appropriately utilized, then they're useless to me. And that's a pretty black and white distinction right there. And unfortunately, the way that we measure that in every other thing is through productivity. A useless salesperson doesn't make sales. I can fire that person because they're not bringing in revenue. IT has been seen as a cost center for how long? You guys just cost me money. So if I can cut back on the number of people you have working, then your cost curve flattens. And now all of a sudden, it's a whole lot cheaper for me to keep you guys around. Maybe things take a little bit longer to get done, but I don't care.
Even like going back to your money equation, when you go through training for like ISC, for CISSP or whatever, it's all about figuring out what the annualized loss expectancy is. So you can put dollars behind that. And then if the control is more, you don't implement the control because
it's not cost effective.
It's not cost effective. I'll just, take that loss when it comes, and then you have the credit card breach at Target.
It's like when I'm trying to balance out whether or not I'm going to pay for Apple Music. Am I going to get $15 a month worth of use out of this? If the answer is no, I'm not going to do it. But, you know, what's the goal? When do we have to draw that line? Because there's a lot of things that we actually do. We invest more in them than we probably should because of the peace of mind it gives us, so that Brian Krebs doesn't call us and find, hey, guess what I just found out?
Yeah.
Well, and part of that is the cost of brand has to be calculated in that as well, because yeah, we could pay the fines and that's cheaper than building the protection and the safety nets and all the things that go around it. But if I'm SolarWinds, and yeah, the dollar cost of their situation may not have been as high as the costs that they should have put in to protect it in the first place, but their reputation took a really big hit to the point where are they ever going to be able to do business the way they did before?
So I'm going to put on my Greg Farrell Australian Senate hat right now. Do you still shop at Target?
Yeah. No, I don't disagree with that.
They
totally agree with
they
that.
recovered.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing. No bad PR lasts forever. Like, eventually you can come back.
Does it last long enough? Because we've seen companies go under after situations like that, or get sold, or have to rebrand, or there's a lot of places where they do get an endpoint.
The memory and technology is a lot longer, right? Like we're around making these decisions for a lot longer than, okay, yeah, the place where I go and buy some clothes, okay, I had some options. Maybe they're gonna get their act together in a couple of months. It'll be fine. These others, no, there's probably some systemic problems, and from a reputation perspective, there a lot of these companies that get breached. They are long felt impacts.
Yeah, especially if customers say, "I'm going to move off of there," and the cost to move back is going to be quite expensive as well. But it could also be that the next person gets hacked. And then, sometimes we've seen this in some places where you just kind of bounce around because, well, this place doesn't feel safe, so let's jump to the next one. Well, this one just had the same problems. Let's move to the next one.
They're all inherently insecure because of the service that they're delivering.
Yeah, to some extent. I want to kind of go back to the people costs of running some of these systems and draw some parallels to cloud, because we saw a lot of companies move to the cloud because it's expensive to run your own Exchange server. So why not let the experts, the people that created Exchange in the first place, run Exchange for us? And their ability to scale across multiple customers is going to provide some inherent benefits. And it may be my limited view of things, but it feels like we're kind of heading in that direction a bit with managed security service providers. And being able to say, yeah, I can't have that 40-person SOC, but maybe I can hire somebody that does have a 40-person SOC to be able to manage some parts of this for me.
So I will actually plug here, because it's one of my favorite videos of all time that we did with Tech Unplugged many, many years ago. My friend Justin Warren, who put out a video that said, why people choose cloud. And the short answer is predictability. Because if I have to pay the same amount every month to something, whether it's a tool or a service or outsource, and I get a certain level of service out of it, then I want that. Mm-hmm. People don't want bespoke, custom, artisanal anything if it takes forever to deliver it. And so what happens is that if you look at a traditional bell curve of how long it takes for things to get done, cloud actually shrinks that bell curve to basically nothing, a very big peak, the Balmer peak, and then nothing again. Because cloud creates predictability. Mm-hmm. And that's what people want more than anything else. If you don't believe me, you have a warranty on something, don't you? You're effectively paying for the predictability of being able to get it repaired if it breaks. That's what people want more than anything else. And if you can deliver that, if you can deliver the green lights, or as John brought up, you can deliver a person on the other end of the phone going, hey, stuff's not looking right over there. That's what they want.
I think that works really well for homogeneous services, right? Everybody pretty much consumes email, Office 365 in the same way. Yeah, there's a little bit of difference here and there. I think security, at least in my mind, security, maybe a part of it, yeah, is very homogeneous, but I feel like there's a level of this, or a larger percentage of that is kind of bespoke to kind of each company, that makes it really difficult to kind of, fit that into the same model.
But do you have to offload all of it? Or can you offload that piece that is fairly homogeneous?
Yeah.
And you still need to have, So I would never propose that an MSSP is there to replace all the security people every organization needs, but it's there to offload
Patreon.
a chunk of it, yeah,
Yeah.
a chunk of it, so that maybe we only need 2 people to keep things going, and they can be more generalists. They don't have to be the more expensive specialists, maybe.
As you can see, this is a very complicated subject. But the more we talk about it, the more we bring up all these ideas, the more we learn things from each other, the better off it gets, the better off we all are, because a rising tide lifts all boats. And that's really what a lot of this discussion is designed to do, is to help you out there understand where the challenges are, to understand where the professional, trusted advisors think that things are, and how to solve those issues. And we have a number of great roundtable discussions that we do on a regular basis, not just here at events like Security Field Day. We also do them with companies that are trying to tell us about some of the cool stuff that they're doing. We have the On-Premise IT podcast, where we shrink that down to a 20-minute discussion that's very pointed sometimes. So if you want to learn a little bit more about all of those things, you can check out techfieldday.com for some of our roundtable recordings. You can also check out gestaltit.com for some of our other content that's kind of similar to that. And we hope that it helps spark some joy in your life and help you understand that there's more than one way to look at this, and there's more than one way to solve all of these problems. And hopefully it reduces your stress level a little bit and makes you a little bit more secure.